I woke up with hair in my mouth and a bald patch on my head. Turns out, my own parents drugged my tea and cut my hair in my sleep, just days before my sister Lily's engagement party. Their message was clear: stay invisible. Don't outshine the bride. But instead of disappearing like I always did, I made a different choice. I showed up. I stood on stage and played their own words through a speaker for everyone to hear. The insults, the manipulation, the years of grooming me into silence. That speech went viral. The backlash was instant, and so was the attention. I got offers, interviews, book deals. A movement was born. Trimmed no more. Lily and I joined forces. We uncovered decades of receipts, emails, contracts, files they never thought we'd see. We weren't just daughters, we were their brand. And when that brand cracked, they tried to erase me. Instead, I went national. I told the truth. I named names. And for a moment, I thought that was the end of the story. I thought the worst thing they could take from me was my hair. I was wrong. Now they want my voice. It started like this: a knock on the studio door. A man in a blazer, a sealed white envelope. Inside it 32 pages of legal poison. They're suing me, my parents, for defamation, emotional distress, damage to their reputations. The very reputations they built on polishing Lily and cutting me down. They listed everything. My viral wedding speech, the book deal, my interview on national TV, even the studio I co-founded for survivors. They called it all malicious smear campaign disguised as personal storytelling. What really made me freeze was this sentence: the defendant has weaponized exaggerated memories and emotional instability to portray her family in a false and harmful light. Exaggerated memories, emotional instability. This from the same people who snuck into my bedroom, cut my hair in the dark, and left me a sticky note that said, "Don't make this about you." Becca paced the studio floor, fire in her eyes. They're not trying to win, Ava. They're trying to scare you. Silence you. Freeze everything you've built. I nodded slowly. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like the one under attack. I felt like the one with everything to expose. There's a kind of violence that doesn't need fists. It shows up in paper, in tone, in threats dressed like negotiations. They want me to be quiet again. But I've learned something about the truth. It echoes. And this time, they handed me a louder microphone. The lawsuit wasn't just designed to bleed me. It was designed to stall me. Every media appearance I had lined up, canceled. Every partnership, postponed until further notice. Even the studio sponsors started backing away. Fear spreads fast when legal threats show up, especially the kind signed by a former federal judge, my father's old college roommate. Becca was already on her third coffee and fifth meltdown. "This isn't just pressure," she said, pacing. "This is a full-blown PR asphyxiation. You need a team." "I have you," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You need someone who wears suits on purpose." That's how I met Jordan Choi, civil rights lawyer turned media specialist. She showed up the next morning in a tailored navy blazer and heels that sounded like war drums. She didn't even shake my hand. Just looked me in the eye and said, "If they want to play with fire, let's bring gasoline." Jordan didn't flinch at the defamation suit. She'd seen worse from Fortune 500 families trying to muzzle whistleblowers. "They're not just going after your story," she said, flipping through the documents. "They're trying to discredit your mind." She pointed to phrases: emotional instability, delusions, performance distortion. "They're not accusing you of lying. They're accusing you of being broken." That's when Lily walked into the room. She hadn't said much since the first headline dropped. But now, she looked like she hadn't slept, and not because of fear. Because of fury. They think she's the only one who remembers. Lily asked Jordan. "I've got copies, texts, voice notes. A calendar invite from the day they took her to the youth spa and gave her something in her tea." Becca blinked. "You kept all that?" Lily nodded. "They always train me to keep receipts. Just not for myself." She pulled out a small folder from her bag, filled with handwritten notes and transcripts. And then she dropped the bomb. "Also, I'm counter-filing." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Lily didn't blink. "Medical gaslighting, negligent emotional endangerment, identity coercion." Becca's jaw dropped. "Is that even a thing?" Jordan smiled slowly. "It is now. We didn't go to war. We went to court. And we brought everything. There's a moment when the bullied stop backing away and start documenting. This isn't just my case anymore. It's ours. And if they thought a lawsuit would shut us down, they forgot we've already been examined our whole lives. I used to think courtrooms were about justice. Turns out, they're about performance. The lighting's cold. The air is still. The benches are just stiff enough to make you sit straighter than usual. It felt less like truth, telling, and more like standing on trial for having emotions. The first hearing was procedural. Preliminary argument and response. But when the bailiff called our case and I stood up, I felt every camera phone shift in my direction. They'd opened it to the public. Of course they had. My parents sat on the opposite bench. My mother wore a pearl choker and that tight, brittle smile that always meant we're still pretending. My father didn't look at me. Neither did the attorney they'd hired, a well-known litigator who'd once defended a celebrity against image defamation. Becca whispered, "They're trying to make this a show trial." "They already made it a family show?" I muttered. "I'm just flipping the ending." Their lawyer stood first. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a case about free speech. This is a case about false speech. About a daughter who turned personal conflict into public crusade, who exaggerated private moments into marketable content." He turned and looked at me. "Ms. Ellis is not a victim. She is a brand." That was when Jordan stood up. "And your clients, are they not a brand too? Are they not the ones who curated one daughter's life for applause while trimming the other into silence? If we are on trial for becoming public, then let us put everything on the record. All the files, all the contracts, all the spa appointments." The judge raised a brow. "Let's move forward with evidence review next week. Ms. Ellis will need your full media archives submitted in discovery." I nodded. I was ready. Until I saw Lily's face. She looked hesitant. Unsteady. Something was off. That night, she showed up at my apartment holding her phone like it was a grenade. "There's something you need to know," she said. She handed me the phone. It was an email. From our parents' legal team. "Offer to drop charges, conditional settlement, if Ms. Ellis agrees to cease all public activity and releases a statement retracting key emotional claims. We are willing to dismiss the suit entirely." The part that made my stomach drop: a private conversation has taken place with Ms. Lily Ellis, who has expressed openness to facilitating resolution. I looked up at her. "You talked to them?" Lily's eyes welled. "Just once. Just to listen. I thought if I could stop this before it got worse." I stepped back. "You thought about settling behind my back?" "I didn't agree to anything," she said. "But Ava, they threatened to countersue me next. They said I faked documents. That if I don't back off, they'll ruin me too." Becca stood behind me, frozen. Jordan was silent, and I realized this was their real strategy. Not to beat me in court. To break me at home. They were never after justice. They were after distance. Division. They don't need to win in court if they can get us to betray each other in the waiting room. But I've learned something stronger than fear. It's called clarity. And clarity means this: if they want a public trial, then I'll give them the whole damn story. There's a moment before a storm hits when the air feels too still. Too quiet. That was what the studio felt like the night before the hearing. Lily was gone. She hadn't spoken to me in 2 days. Becca hadn't said it out loud, but I could feel her worry building like a fault line. Jordan, however, didn't flinch. "We need to stop playing defense," she said. "They're leaking stories. They're planting narratives. Meanwhile, we're sitting on evidence." I stared at the manila folder on the table. It held over 50 pages of email correspondence between our parents and their legal PR firm. Some were drafted responses. Others were full-blown plans. Plans to pre-spin the trial. Paint Ava as unstable. Question her motives. Ipley financial incentive. Then there was this line, one that made my breath catch. Leverage Lily's wavering loyalty if needed. Threaten countersuit if necessary. Encourage public reconciliation, narrative for long-term image repair. That wasn't just strategy. That was manipulation, weaponized, and it was time to set it on fire. We posted the first email at 8:12 p.m., then in another. Each image watermarked, verified, timestamped. Jordan released a legal disclaimer with every post. All evidence released complies with discovery rights and is part of public interest protection. Becca added the caption. When the people suing you care more about headlines than healing, here's what they really plan behind closed doors. #FentheFamilyFiles. It blew up within hours. Not just TikTok. mainstream media, influencers, even a few ex-employees from the firm that handled our parents' public image stepped forward with anonymous comments. Everything in those emails. That's how they operate. Ava's not exaggerating. She's exposing. Someone on Reddit mapped the timeline. Someone else built a searchable archive. And then the biggest surprise of all, Lily posted. From her own account. Just 3 words. I believe her. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. For the first time, I wasn't standing on a stage. I was standing on solid ground. They thought court was the battleground. But I've spent my whole life preparing for this kind of war. And here's what they didn't count on. When you grow up being cut down, you learn exactly where the blade will fall. Now the blade's in my hand, and I'm not here to hurt. I'm here to expose. There's a specific kind of silence inside a courtroom. Not peaceful, not respectful, performative. Like everyone's just holding their breath, waiting to see who breaks character first. The morning of the trial, I sat in a black blazer and simple flats. No makeup, no statement earrings, no smile. Jordan had told me, don't try to look likable. Try to look real. So I did. I looked like the girl who woke up in her childhood bed, hair in her mouth, and a sticky note taped to the mirror that said, don't make this about you. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for the record. The judge called me to the stand at 10:47 a.m. I walked past my parents without looking at them. But I felt it, the familiar weight of my mother's gaze, judging, measuring, adjusting me like a dress that didn't quite fit. I sat, took the oath, and waited. Their lawyer went first, Ms. Ellis. Is it true that you financially profited from your story? Yes, I said evenly. And I've used that profit to fund legal aid for girls who don't survive these stories. And you claim your parents harmed you emotionally. But is there any medical diagnosis that confirms this harm? I didn't need a diagnosis to know I was being erased, I said. But since you asked, yes, I brought records. Would you like them entered into evidence? He blinked. Jordan smirked. Then came the real test. They called my mother to the stand. She walked like she always had, shoulders back, chin high, ready to deliver a performance. She took the oath, sat, smoothed her skirt, and looked at me. Straight through me. Their lawyer began, Mrs. Ellis, did you cut your daughter's hair? My mother smiled politely. No, I simply supervised. My husband handled the trimming. It was meant to be symbolic, a fresh start. Ava had been struggling. Jordan stood instantly. Objection, character implication. The defendant's mental state is not on trial. The judge nodded. Sustained. Rephrase, or Mrs. Ellis, did you drug your daughter? A pause. Of course not, she said, hands folded. She must have misunderstood. Perhaps she took something herself. She was prone to dramatics. I felt Becca grip the bench behind me. Jordan didn't blink. She stood slowly. Mrs. Ellis, she said, calm. Do you recognize this? She held up a copy of the sticky note. The courtroom projector flashed the words for everyone to see. You're still beautiful. Don't make this about you. Just focus on your speech for Lily's big day. Jordan stepped closer. Is this your handwriting? Yes, my mother said. Did you write this before or after cutting Ava's hair? My mother stiffened. Before. It was meant to reassure her. Jordan raised an eyebrow. You reassured her before violating her body while she slept. Silence, no objection came. Even their lawyer knew better. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Ellis. Did you or did you not approve the act of cutting your daughter's hair without consent? My mother's voice was flat. I did what I believed was necessary. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I simply said loud enough for the mic, and that's the problem. You always thought love and control were the same thing. Some people lie with their voices. Others lie with their stillness. But under oath, stillness cracks. She didn't need to confess. She confirmed everything with her calm. And now the court saw it too. Not rage. Not madness. A mother too composed to admit cruelty. And a daughter finally brave enough to name it. I always thought the hardest part of truth was telling it. But it turns out, the hardest part is when the truth turns on you. The courtroom was tilting in our favor. My testimony landed. My mother's calm shattered. And Jordan was preparing to rest our case with final evidence from the family files drop. Then the bailiff entered, paper in hand. Your Honor, new material has been submitted by the plaintiff's team under emergency grounds. Audio evidence, previously unreleased. Jordan stood up immediately. We object. This wasn't disclosed in discovery. Their lawyer shrugged. It was just found. We believe it's relevant to Ava's credibility. I felt my throat tighten. What now? The judge allowed it. Play the audio. The courtroom screen blinked to life. Then came a voice. Mine. But not from this year, not from the wedding. It was old, grainy, raw, desperate. I know I should have let Lily take the scholarship. But they'll never let me shine if I don't take this one chance. She'll be fine. She always is. Gasps in the courtroom. Becca's hand flew to her mouth. Even Jordan looked thrown. I had forgotten that tape. Forgotten what I said at 17, half crying into my phone. Recording a voice memo after winning a scholarship I was never meant to get. Because I'd played the game too. I'd taken something that was meant for Lily. Their lawyer paused the audio. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard a story of control. But what if Ava wasn't just a victim? What if she was also complicit? What if this wasn't abuse but rivalry? I wanted to stand, to scream, to tell them the full story. That my parents gave Lily every spotlight for years. That when the scholarship came up, they told me not to apply. That it was the only time I ever stepped out of line, because I was drowning. Jordan placed a calming hand on mine. Let it sit, she whispered. Let the silence sting them back. But the damage was done. The judge called a recess. As the room emptied, Lily stayed in her seat. She didn't look at me. Outside, reporters were waiting. Online, the headlines had already shifted. Ava Ellis. Not so innocent. Leaked audio suggests sisters' rivalry goes deeper. I leaned against the cold marble wall, breath shallow. Then Lily appeared. I didn't give them that recording, she said softly. Her eyes were wide. Real. I believe you, I said. But someone had it. Someone kept it. We both turned to Becca. But she was already shaking her head. Not me. Jordan stepped forward. I have a theory, she said, holding up her phone. It wasn't Lily. It wasn't Becca. It wasn't even your parents. She tapped a name on the screen. Nate. Lily's ex-husband. The one who once said, maybe if it were you in the dress, I'd be excited. And now he was back. With files. With motives. With vengeance of his own. Some truths cut deeper when you forget they existed. And just because you outgrow who you were doesn't mean the world will let you leave her behind. I spoke out to reclaim my voice. But now the past is speaking back, and it sounds a lot like revenge. They say the enemy of your enemy is your friend. But what if he's worse? Nate, the man Lily married. The man who whispered to me the night before their wedding, if you were the one in that dress, maybe I'd be ecstatic, not with roses or apologies, but with files. Old audio, deleted photos, saved messages. Proof, he claimed, that we weren't as innocent as we pretended to be. And if we didn't drop everything, he'd release all of it. Becca found the burner email first. Sent from an anonymous account to 3 major media outlets. Want the real story behind Ava and Lily Ellis? I've got receipts they'll never show in court. Jordan checked the metadata. It's him, she confirmed. And if he sends even half of what he's teasing, this gets worse. Worse how? Lily asked. Jordan looked between us. Character assassination. He'll spin your pasts, your silence, even your trauma into strategy. He knows what to say and what to cut. My stomach twisted. Of course he does. He learned from the best. We had one option: confront him. The meeting was Becca's idea. Neutral ground. Private caf, no cameras, no phones. Nate showed up 10 minutes late, in a navy suit he didn't deserve and a grin that made my skin crawl. Ava, he said, nodding. Lily, good to see you both, standing. Lily flinched. I didn't. What do you want? I asked. He sipped his coffee like it was wine. You built a narrative, Ava, one that made you a victim. A phoenix. A star. But you left things out. Like the part where you begged me to stop the wedding. Or the voicemail you left after your book deal fell through the first time. I froze. Jordan had warned me he doesn't have to lie. He just has to twist. So here's the deal, Nate said. You two drop the lawsuit. Pull the campaign. Publish a joint statement saying you exaggerated under emotional distress. I go away. And if we don't? Lily asked. He leaned forward, grin widening. Then I drop everything. And I don't mean on Twitter. I mean the Chronicle, national TV. A podcast already waiting. Becca's voice cut through the air. You're bluffing. He pulled out a flash drive and dropped it on the table. You'll find out. I stared at it. It didn't scare me. Not because it wasn't dangerous. But because for the first time I wasn't alone. I looked at Lily. She nodded. Becca's hand slid across the table, covering mine. And I said, "Release it." Nate blinked. "What? Release it?" Every message, every voicemail, every messy, complicated, half-healed version of us. You don't win by exposing the worst parts of me. Because I already did that in public. On stage. With a mic in my hand. You think you're holding a weapon. But that flash drive, that's just our story. And we get to tell it better. He didn't smile this time. He stood up, left the flash drive behind. For the first time in years, he walked away first. There's nothing more dangerous to a manipulator than someone who's no longer ashamed. He thought secrets gave him power. But shame only works if you agree to carry it. We didn't. Not anymore. Now the story belongs to us. All of it. The courtroom felt colder that day. Not because it was winter. Because it was the end. Or so I thought. I wore black again. Not for clarity. I wanted the world to see I was no longer trying to be palatable. Or soft. Or safe. I wasn't here to be forgiven. I was here to be understood. The judge entered at 10:01 a.m. No opening remarks. No performance. Just a folder, a voice. And the final line we'd been waiting for. After review of both parties' testimony, evidence, and supplemental materials entered during pretrial discovery, the court finds in favor of the defendant, Ms. Ava Ellis. I didn't exhale, not right away, because I heard what came next. Further, the plaintiff's attempt to suppress documented evidence via strategic legal threats is noted as ethically questionable. This court recommends investigation into the use of private consultants in personal reputation cases. Jordan's jaw set like stone. Becca gripped my shoulder. And Lily started to cry. We didn't just win. We broke the system they built, but I still didn't feel done. Not yet. After court, while cameras flashed and reporters surged forward, I asked for the mic. No one stopped me. They wouldn't dare. This wasn't just about me, I said. It wasn't even just about my family. It was about every girl who was told to stay quiet to keep the peace. Every daughter labeled dramatic when she dared to name her hurt. Every young woman who had her identity sliced into a shape that made others more comfortable. I paused, then delivered what I hadn't planned to say. Today, I'm not filing a new lawsuit. I'm starting a new campaign. Not for revenge, but for reform. Because it turns out what happened to me isn't rare. It's just rarely admitted. We called it Project No More Notes. Named after the one that started it all. You're still beautiful. Don't make this about you. We launched it that night. A legal advocacy fund for girls silenced by image control, emotional coercion, and reputation grooming, inside their own homes. Submissions flooded in. Emails, letters, voice memos, from other Avas, from other Lilies, from people who had no mic, no team, no Becca by their side. Until now, winning doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes, it just feels like breath. Like air finally returning to lungs you forgot how to use. They tried to cut me down to size. Instead, they showed me exactly how big I could become. And now, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to build something bigger, something they can't trim, something they'll never own. Again, they asked me if I'd ever speak on stage again. After everything, the courtroom, the headlines, the book, the silence turned to fire. They asked me if I could still stand behind a mic without shaking. I told them. I didn't survive all that to whisper. It was a crisp autumn evening in Chicago. The final night of the No More Notes Summit. Our biggest gathering yet. Over 2,000 people in the room. All of them had been told at some point in their lives, don't make this about you. And now here they were, making everything about themselves, and owning it. I stood backstage for a moment watching. A girl with a buzz cut held her mother's hand, both of them crying. A college student in a yellow dress read a poem about her first therapy session. An older woman in her 60s whispered to Becca, I thought I'd missed my chance. Turns out I was just early for yours. Then someone cued my name. I stepped onto the stage not in black, but in bold red. No script, no teleprompter. Just me, just the mic, just the truth. 3 years ago, I stood on a vineyard terrace and played a voice memo that wasn't meant to be heard. Today, I stand here playing the voices that were never even recorded. You know who you are. You were told to stay soft, to be pleasing, to protect everyone's comfort but your own. You were called too loud, too much, too dramatic, and still, you are here. The room was so quiet you could hear every breath being held. Then I asked the question that's been waiting for its turn. If you could say one sentence to the person who trimmed you down, what would you say? I let the silence stretch. Let them sit in it. Because silence doesn't scare me anymore. Not when I own it. Some people shouted answers. Some cried. Some just nodded slowly like their truth didn't need to be said aloud to be real. Then I gave them mine. Here's mine, I said. You were wrong about me. And the room erupted. I used to think justice looked like a courtroom. But real justice. It looks like a girl raising her voice in a room that once told her to sit down. It sounds like truth shaking but spoken anyway. And it feels like standing tall, even with scars. So if you're holding your own story in pieces, don't wait for permission. Write it, say it. Cut the silence yourself. If this story made something inside you shift, share your truth in the comments. Subscribe to Telling Story with Me for more stories that speak when others stay quiet. Your voice belongs here.